So I start off by pulling at the scalp and just seeing if there are any gaps. Sometimes older girls might have a part where the scalp isn't properly attached. But here you can see as I pull, she's got all of her original pegs, which hold the dome into the actual head itself. So I snap those. That's not a problem because you basically have to snap them to get them apart. It's not something you would look for in a doll unless you wanted one that had specifically not been opened. Next, I get my crochet hook and I'm just prising that scalp out from under. The scalp itself turns upwards and goes inside the dome, so you need to peel it out from underneath. I do this with a crochet hook, something that's not very sharp, because I don't want to scratch the actual doll itself. I just poke it up in there and just pull that entire flange out. So I'm going to carry on around the scalp, just snapping the pegs and pulling up the scalp until it is detached. In order to take the hard cap off, which is this kind of pale yellow part, you need to squeeze the two prongs together. You could do this with pliers, but you'll find that it's a very tight fit and it's hard to do without breaking the hard cap, which is necessary to put an original scalp back in. So usually I'll take a scalpel and I'll trim a tiny bit at a time, just taking the smallest amount off and just keep checking it with a pair of pliers to see if it will pop off. We can see here the gap is still too small. Even when those two prongs touch, I cannot get that back off. They weren't really made to come apart. So what I'll do again is I'll go back in with the scalpel and I'll take a little bit more off just until I'm able to take it apart. Here we go, it's just popped off. Perfect. So we can see that this one has quite a large crack in her body and that's why her legs came out so easily, although this one doesn't have the typical crack in the pelvis, just has a crack in the upper body. A Kenner has 4 screws holding them together, so just go through with a screwdriver and just undo all of the screws. Unless your Kenner's been taken apart before, you'll probably need a scalpel for the next step. The head melt is harder than it looks. It's not soft and squishy, it usually is pretty solid, and in order to take those two pieces apart you might have to just run over that line with a scalpel just to prise it apart, and when you have, she should just pop open. There's one more screw inside that holds in the iMac, but I'm not going to take that out today because I don't need to. But it's relatively straightforward, just exactly the same as you would do on a Neo. Here I'm just using a crochet hook to unhook the spring in the back as you would on a Neo so I can pull the two apart. And here we go, completely taken apart, and I promise you it is as easy as it looks. Just listen to that signature Kenner pip. I hope that was helpful, or at least made the idea of taking one of them apart a little bit less intimidating. And that's all from me for today. Enjoy!